Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I've always been told that life is but a minute, just 60 seconds in it, forced upon us. We didn't seek it, and we didn't choose it. But thank goodness each one of us can determine how we use it. We usually suffer if we abuse it. Just a tiny minute, but eternity is in it. Let me first of all thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I certainly want to thank you for the warm welcome that you gave me. But more importantly than any of that, I thank you for your commitment to the issue of a sensible drug policy. I thank you for your hope, your belief, and your faith that America, as far as it has become, still has much further to go. And I do believe that America has the potential of becoming and being the America that yet has not been, but the America that all of us hope to see. When we talk about drug policy, it intersects with every major aspect of public policy, but receives little of the public discussion and less of the public attention that's given to lots of other issues, although we spend more than $50 billion a year on what we call the war on drugs. The direct impact on communities has been devastating. What has become clear in the past few years is the growing collateral consequences. These are especially felt by the more than 600,000 people who come home from jail and prison every year, their families and their communities as they attempt to return to civilian society. Let me just review a couple of these intersections with you. First of all, drug policy has been responsible for the largest share of increase in the inmate prison population, increasing from 40,000 people in prison or jail in 1980 due to drugs to over 500,000 today. From 40,000 in the 1980s to over 500,000 today. We now have a vast research of literature which demonstrates that this mass incarceration has had almost no impact on the drug trade. Over the past quarter of a century, drug arrests have more than tripled. Yet surveys show monthly drug use of 14.1% in 1979, declining to 6.6% in 1991, and rising slightly to 8.1% today. By 2005, more than 4 in 10 drug arrests were for marijuana and marijuana possession. These arrests accounted for almost 80% of the growth in drug arrests over the 1990s. A study of Illinois law enforcement showed that a 47% increase in drug arrests coincided with a 22.5% decrease in drunk driving arrests, and concluded that increased traffic fatalities could result from the reduction of attention to drunk driving. Meanwhile, the number of drug offenders in prison increased a stunning 1,100% since 1980, partially as a result of harsher sentencing laws. The proportion of defendants convicted of a drug offense increased from 79% to 93% between 1988 and 2004. The average sentence for all offenses increased 8%, while average sentences for drug offenses increased 17%. The number of days served increased even more sharply with the passage of mandatory sentences and new sentencing guidelines. Drug offenders leaving prison in 1986 had served an average of 22 months. Offenders sentenced in 2004 were expected to serve an average of 62 months. The relation of incarceration and crime is not nearly as simple as some people would want to have us believe. Because there are so many intertwined factors that impact the crime rate, it is difficult to establish cause and effect. More than half of those in state prisons for drug offenses have no history of violence and have no convictions of high-level drug dealing. One study by economist Stephen Levitt estimates that about 25% of the decline in violent crime can be attributed to increased incarceration. He notes that while 1/4 of the crime drop is not insubstantial, we then know that most of the decline, 3/4, was due to factors other than incarceration. One of the most egregious aspects of U.S. drug policy are the inequities. Overall, African Americans are incarcerated at nearly 6 times the rate of whites, and Hispanics at nearly twice the rate of whites. Black women represent 30% of all females incarcerated under state or federal jurisdiction. Hispanic women represent 16%. In 1999, 1 of every 14 black children had a parent in prison, compared with 1 of every 125 white children. For young African American males, the disparity is even higher, with 1 in 9 African American males between 25 and 29 being incarcerated. Since persons of color are disproportionately low income, they are also more likely to be impacted by policies which disadvantage low-income people experience in the justice system. This is especially true for women. 60% of incarcerated women were not employed full-time when they were arrested, as opposed to 40% of men. 37% of women had incomes under $600 in the month leading up to their arrest, compared to 28% of men. African Americans make up an estimated 14% of regular drug users, but are 37% of those arrested for drug offenses and 56% of those incarcerated in state prisons for drug offenses. Racial disparities are also evident in the juvenile justice system. African American youth represent 17% of their age group in the general population, but represent 46% of juvenile arrests, 31% of referrals to juvenile court, and 41% of waivers to adult court.